Well, welcome to another session of Real, Raw, and Honest. Today we're going to continue to talk about forgiveness. And last week we talked about what forgiveness is not. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about what forgiveness is. So, what is forgiveness? What does it mean when we say that we have forgiven, and what does it entail? And next week I really want to go into how to forgive and to let go of the pain that still is in our hearts after an event has happened. So, really, when we look at the bottom line of this, forgiveness is releasing another person through forgiveness for the acts, for the words, and for the offenses against us that caused us pain, either emotionally, physically, or mentally. Something has harmed us, whatever the incident was, and it wounded us. And so we have emotional residue in us. And so forgiveness means letting that person be released from the effects and the damage that have happened to us. So this is not always easy, but it is doable. And because I will say this, God has provided the Holy Spirit to help us, and He has also given His Son, who died on the cross, for our ability to be able to forgive as He forgave us. So not only did Christ show us the way, but He has already forgiven us of the many sins and the things that we've done that harmed Him, hurt His reputation, hurt the Father. He's already forgiven us for all of those things. And the longer I live, the more I realize that there is so many things that I have done that have hurt the heart of God. And so He has forgiven me. And so I can forgive my brother and my sister. So, is there a definition of forgiveness in the Bible? Well, I think honestly that the life and death of Jesus Christ and His coming to the earth and what He did while He was here is the perfect example. So reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, James, and John, looking at those and seeing what Christ did for us and how He took our sins on Himself and He forgave us of all of those things so that we could be in relationship with Him and be one as He intended us to be, as He is with the Father. I think that is where we get the best picture of forgiveness in the Bible. So, why does God tell us that we have to forgive other people? That's what the Bible says. We have to, or we won't be forgiven. His words, not mine. Why does He say that? Excuse me. I think that, up until this time, as we've looked at how Jesus Christ has forgiven us and the cost of His life that He took to do it, if we don't forgive someone else, it's like slapping him in the face or spitting in his face. If we won't forgive the people around us, it's like saying, thank you for doing what you did. However, I don't have to, right? But, it's like saying thanks, but I'm just going to grind that into the dirt because I want to do what I want to do. So Jesus did show us that it would be hard, but He also showed us it would be doable. And so when you consider His life and the people that came against Him, the religious leaders who trapped Him and who lied on Him, and Judas who betrayed Him, and the disciples who walked away from Him, ran away from Him in the last minutes of the last hours of His life. We consider all of that pain and that hurt, that betrayal that He felt when He looked at the world and He saw the sin that was on it, and He took every sin. He took all of the sin. And so we might think, okay, well, my sin isn't that bad. Well, multiply that times 1,000,000,000, because He took not just your sin, not just my sin, but the sin of every person, and He took it all at the same time to the cross. And so that's a pretty heavy, weighty burden. And so we do know what it feels like, when we are needing to forgive someone. It feels heavy, right? It feels burdensome. And, if we don't forgive, it can cause a death to us if we don't truly forgive. A death not in a good way, but death in a negative way. See, the death we feel will be a death of wanting revenge when we forgive. When we forgive, it's like going, I'm giving up the right to want revenge. I'm giving up the right. You're dying to wanting to see them pay for what it is they've done. You're releasing them, and there's a death of your own selfish desires in the midst of that as well. So We know it's going to be hard, but we also know it's going to be doable because Jesus said it's doable. And I can attest that there have been many people that I've had to forgive for certain things that they've done. And it isn't always easy, but it is doable. There's always something, right? So it is required of us by God. So according to the Bible, forgiveness is God's promise not to count our sins against us. When we forgive, He wipes that away. And this is what we do for other people, essentially. He, as we come to Him and say, Father, forgive me, He takes our sin and He wipes it away. He blots it out. And when we go to another person, we need to go, I know what you've done, but I'm not going to keep bringing it up and throwing it in your face. I'm not going to continue to hold it against you. I'm going to blot out this incident. I'm not saying you're making it okay. I'm not saying you're giving him a free pass. I'm not saying you're doing any of those things, right? But we are required to forgive as God forgave. So, and you might be saying to me, okay, that's hard. That's actually really, really, really hard. And I get you. I understand what you're saying. And depending on what it is that they've done to us, this can actually feel next to impossible to do. So, but we know that God's never going to ask us to do something that is impossible to do. He's not going to do this. He took the impossible on Himself and He did that. He accomplished that. He finished that. And through that impossibility, He opened a way for us to walk into what was once impossible to what is now possible. So let's get into it. So when we have forgiven other people, we are showing to those people who have hurt us that we understand God's forgiveness toward us and that we are therefore extending it to them. So we understand the love of God and the forgiveness of God and what He's done to us, and we're extending it as a gift to the person who has wounded us. I will tell you, they most often will not know what to do with that. If they are a believer, they might understand what's happening, and they probably will understand it. They might use that, but for non-believers, they will be shocked that you are coming at them and you are forgiving them and giving them this free gift. And so remembering that it is our love for God that actually enables us to forgive anybody else for anything that they have done to harm us. It has nothing to do with the love that we feel for that other person. And let's be completely honest. If we've really been wounded by another person deeply and profoundly, sometimes, if we're honest, we don't love them at all. And in fact, we might actually despise them and want I could even sometimes, we are capable of feeling hatred toward another person. I'm so angry with them. I'm so hurt by them that I actually hate them. And so, we understand those feelings. So if we're honest, and I do suggest you be completely honest with the Lord when you go before Him, and just go, yep, I don't like it. So what we discussed last week was what forgiveness is not. And I hope that was helpful for you. I hope that you found that the information that was in there was something that you could look at and go, okay, I've done some of these things. I've not done all of them. I'm past that. I'm not doing any of those things anymore. I think that would be really, really helpful. But before I go any further, I just want to say I'm asking you please to subscribe, please to like and share this content with somebody, because, we need to be able to forgive, and we might need forgiveness ourselves. So this is going to help a lot of people if you forward it to other people, if you share, if you like, if you comment. Those things actually help me as well. So please feel free to do all of those things. So let's look at what is forgiveness in this context of what we're talking about. What actually is forgiveness? Forgiveness is going to God and being honest about the pain that we feel. We cannot forgive until we have been honest about the pain that we have felt. We can say the words, I forgive you, but we want them to carry weight. We don't just want them to be something that there are words coming out of our mouth. So we need to be able to go to God and be completely real, raw, and honest, and go before Him and say, this thing hurt me because da 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 da. And it's caused damage, da da da. We need to be completely honest with God and allow Him to take that pain so He can bring healing into our hearts and into our soul. So let's be honest. So let's go and talk to the Lord about these things so that we can forgive on a deep level. I'm sorry, I'm very dry today. So, this is the place to start, just by going to the Lord and being honest and real and raw. So it might also actually include going to somebody who is more qualified to help you to break down what you're looking at. So I'm talking like going to a counselor or somebody that works with inner healing in order to help you work through the pain that you're feeling so that you can fully release that person and separate the pain that you're feeling, and separate the sin of that person from the person themselves. And I will do a teaching on that at some point on separation. That'll be further down the road. But being to work through it, right? Not to be going and talking to somebody who's your friend, your next door neighbor. So it's more of a gossip session than a helpful session. You want to go to somebody who can help you tear it apart, pull it apart, leave it in nice, neat little piles, and forgive and to release, right? So, and it might also actually include going to that person and verbalizing and saying, I forgive you for what you did. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say forgiveness starts with honesty. And it is okay to let that other person know that their actions were harmful and they were hurtful and why and what it did to you. That's totally fine. But I'm going to say this, and sometimes I think it's needed in order to be able to get to the next step for you. There's some reasons why this is not always possible. Sometimes an individual has passed away, or they have moved, or there's no access to them. Their phone number has been changed. You've lost contact. These are all reasons why sometimes you can't. But I also want to say this. Don't put any expectations after you gonna go. Like if you're gonna go, I'm gonna state my case, I'm gonna say what I want to say. Don't put any expectations on their responses, because you might get the opposite of what you're looking for. They might come back at you with rage. They might come back with you with a more of a vindictive thing. But this is why we need to pray about it and go, Lord, what do you want me to do? Going to them and saying, I forgive you for this, and this, is important. I've just recently found that somebody that I know is angry with me, and they insist I understand that I know what it is I've done to hurt them. And I'm like, I absolutely have zero idea what it is that they're upset with me for. Now, in order for that person to get some freedom, they should come to me and talk to me, right? But that probably isn't going to happen now. I don't, because I have absolutely no idea. I feel like, I don't want to give platitude by saying I'm sorry for whatever it is that I did or said that offended you. I don't want to do that. So I don't know where to go at this point in time with this, other than just to sit back and just to wait and see where it goes. I know that there will be contact at some point, and maybe when there is contact, there will be conversation about this. So we'll see where that goes. The thing is when you go to someone, you have to be prepared for whatever it is that they might do or say. So there might be a lashing out. They might verbalize them. They might blame you. They might put their actions on you, and like in a deflection. Yeah, I did this, but I'm putting it on you. But your part is to forgive them and to keep on forgiving them so that it doesn't own you anymore. That's the thing. We want to know that the things that have hurt us don't own us, that the actions of other people don't own us and keep us in bondage, that we are keeping our heart open before God by forgiving and by continuing to forgive and by continuing to release these things that are happening and the things that we feel. So forgiveness means looking at the events, looking at the things that have happened, and separating the person from their sin, right? So the person is allowed sin to work through them to bring damage to you. That's the truth. Because of their own woundedness. I don't make excuses for other people's behavior. We all have the same opportunity before God to come and get healing so that we don't respond in like manner. So the other person can be redeemed and their sin can be removed from them when we forgive, right? So it's coming in and going, I forgive you. I release you. I'm separating you from the thing that you did, and knowing that in my doing that, I'm releasing me, and you're opening a door for them, for God to be able to work in their life. So forgiveness is releasing a person from the harm that they have inflicted on you. You are releasing them. You're opening a door. It happens the very first time you say those three little words, I forgive you. But there will be many times you need to forgive the same situation, the same scenario. But forgiveness begins and it starts, and it is forgiveness the first time you say, I forgive. Now, what do you mean when you say that, Cheryl? How many times does Jesus tell us to forgive somebody if they sin against us? 70 times 7. And, I've looked at this and I thought, well, maybe, for somebody to sin against me that many times in one day, like, am I really naive enough in order for that person to come and do that much damage to me in the course of my lifetime? Perhaps. But the other thing is that when I allow myself to look honestly at the situation, it's the memories that might pop up. It's the feeling of anger. It's the feeling of frustration. It's the feeling of wanting to tell them off. I forgive you. I forgive you. Again, I forgive you. Just to go a little bit deeper, go a little bit further, because you don't want it to own you at all. Not even a little bit, not even a hair. You don't want it to own you. And so forgiveness is on you because it releases you. It doesn't make what they did okay. It doesn't say that they get a pass. It's none of that. It releases you to walk in complete and total freedom, having all of that lifted off of you. So every time you think of the hurt and every time the hurt comes up, forgive them. Every time you feel that, forgive them. Every time you feel the pain, every time your heart hurts, forgive them. Every time you think about it, every time the thought passes through your mind, forgive them. And do it verbally. Always do it verbally. And every time it comes up, when somebody says something or does something, or you see something that reminds you of something that somebody did to you, and you want to go and you want to either gossip about them or you want to tell them off or you want to cause them pain, forgive them. And do it verbally. Always come. This is forgiveness. It is both a one-time event and a process. And so when you have forgiven, each time you've forgiven, you're done until you're not done, because that pain is inside of you. So it's coming to the end of that and allowing the Lord to bring a healing and a cleansing to all of that. So forgiveness is, like I said, not just a one-time thing, and yet it is. Yet it does happen the first time we open our hearts and our mouths in the words of forgiveness. Forgiveness is multi-layered, often because of the pain and the layers of pain that are in us. And so, it will also be many, many more times than one time of saying, I forgive. And when you think about, a person that's been in a marital relationship and one of the spouse that you need to forgive has been unfaithful several times, or you found that they've been addicted to something and caused much damage in the family multiple times, that's a good example, right, of multi-layered forgiveness, right? Years ago, I knew a woman who, I've known several, but a woman whose husband was very physically abusive to her. And she would just forgive. And she goes, well, I've forgiven him, so it's like it never happened. I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about, because that's dangerous. If you've had 15 years of abuse and every time you forgive, it's like, I have to forgive him like he never did it again. He's going to do it again. That's not what I'm talking about. So sometimes forgiveness has some boundaries on it. We'll get into that a little bit further on, but it is the forgiving of the event. And these are things like through the years, you don't trust them, and you don't trust them for good reason. So that forgiveness doesn't have anything to do with the trusting and allowing that person to have full access into your life. That is not necessarily what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about forgiving so you can release them and separate them from their sin, love the person, and not want to have anything to do with their sin, if that makes any sense. So forgiveness is dealing with the pain. It's actually dealing with the pain and giving everything to the Lord. And that is why it is a one-time thing. The first time you say, I forgive this person for whatever it is they've done. The next time it comes up, that's a one-time deal. You've forgiven them. And then the next time the enemy makes sure that something comes up, I forgive this person for X, Y, Z. And then you're good. And then these things keep coming and they go. And so it's a process. but it is also done each time you say I forgive. So I hope that's helpful. We will continue next time and we will talk a little bit more about forgiveness. So I just wanted to say thank you again for listening, and please like, share, and subscribe, and share with somebody who will benefit from this, because forgiveness is something that, like I said at the beginning of last session, that came up as the number one thing that people wanted me to talk about. And so next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about this topic and go a little bit more into depth on how to actually forgive and release that. And so, because it's one thing to be able to say it, it's another thing to be able to do it. And we don't want to just have mental knowledge. We want to have the capacity and the ability and the courage and the strength to be able to practice it and to be able to do it, because our freedom and our happiness and our joy actually depends on it. So thank you so much for listening. I'm trying to keep these short, so we'll see you next week.